It was strange. Real strange. Grandpa Jacob always kept his door open. A crack, at least. Like he wanted you to barge in with news or a bad joke. Today, though, the door stayed shut. A solid oak barrier between him and the rest of the house.
Sarah, my little sister, tugged at my hand. Her eyes, wide and worried, mirrored my own.
Maybe he's sleeping?
I said, more to reassure myself than her. We crept closer, two kids on a mission impossible. Sarah dared to tap on the wood, a sound so small it seemed to disappear into the heavy silence. Still no answer. Through the door I imagined Grandpa Jacob, his booming laugh silenced, his kind eyes closed. The thought sent a shiver down my spine.
Mom? Grandpa Jacob isn't answering?
The hallway, usually filled with the comforting aroma of baking bread, now felt cold and hollow. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut, a knot of worry twisting tighter with every passing second. Sunday mornings at Grandpa Jacob's meant one thing: pancakes. Fluffy golden brown stacks dripping with maple syrup. But today, even the sweet smell couldn't chase away the unease that had settled over the house.
Grandpa's not feeling too well today. He needs his rest.
Mum said, forcing a smile as she flipped a pancake. Sarah, usually a whirlwind of energy at breakfast, poked at her pancakes, her bottom lip trembling. I knew she felt it too, the unspoken fear that hung heavy in the air. We ate in silence, the clinking of forks against plates loud and jarring in the stillness. Even Dad, usually full of jokes and stories, seemed subdued. He kept glancing at his phone, his jaw clenched tight. Waiting for a call, maybe? News from the doctor? The silence stretched on, punctuated by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Each tick was a hammer blow, driving home the reality that things were different now. Later that day, I caught snippets of hushed conversations. Mum on the phone, her voice low and urgent. Dad pacing the living room, running a hand through his hair. The words hospital and treatment filtered through the air, sharp and unwelcome. Fear, cold and clammy, wrapped its icy fingers around my heart. I retreated to my room, seeking solace in the familiar comfort of my books, but the words blurred together, meaningless and distant. How could I focus on fictional adventures when my own life felt like it was spiraling out of control? The silence from Grandpa Jacob's room was deafening. It was the silence of uncertainty, of unspoken fears. We tiptoed around the house, speaking in hushed tones, afraid to break the fragile peace. But the truth was, the peace had already been shattered, broken into a million pieces by the heavy silence emanating from behind that closed oak door.
Sarah, in her own way, tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy.
She dragged her box of Legos into the living room, her little brow furrowed in concentration as she built elaborate castles and fortresses. But even in her play, the fear found its way in.
This tower, she announced, pointing to the tallest spire, is for Grandpa Jacob. It's strong, so he can fight off the bad guys.
My heart ached for her innocence, for the way she used her toys to make sense of a world that felt suddenly scary and uncertain. I knew the bad guys weren't the kind you could fight with plastic swords and shields. They were invisible, insidious, lurking in the shadows of hospital rooms and whispered conversations.
He's gonna be okay, right? She asked, her voice small and uncertain.
I wanted to reassure her, to promise her that everything would be all right. But the truth was, I didn't know, and the uncertainty was the scariest part of all. Days turned into weeks, and the silence from Grandpa Jacob's room remained unbroken. He was gone, whisked away to a place filled with machines and sterile smells, a place we weren't allowed to follow.
Mum stayed strong for Sarah and me, but I saw the worry etched on her face, the way she bit her lip to hold back tears.
Dad buried himself in his work, the lines on his face deepening with each passing day.
We were a family adrift, tossed about by a storm we didn't understand.
One night, I found Mom crying softly in the kitchen. She sat at the table, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be all right, but the words wouldn't come. So I did the only thing I could think of. I sat beside her, my presence a silent offering of support.
Then, one day, a change. The phone rang and Mum's face lit up with a hesitant smile.
Grandpa Jacob was coming home. He wasn't better, not exactly. But he was strong enough to leave the hospital, to spend his days surrounded by the familiar comforts of home.
We waited in the living room, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety swirling within me. And then we heard it. The slow, shuffling footsteps, the faint cough, the creak of the door as it slowly opened.
I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I saw him. Grandpa Jacob, frail, his face drawn, but his eyes still held a spark of their usual warmth. He smiled, a tired but genuine smile. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the silence was broken, not by words, but by a shared look of understanding, of love that transcended words. And in that moment, I knew that even in the face of uncertainty, we would face it together as a family.